Do you ever feel like your own children are beginning to overlook you, or, even worse, that they no longer hold you in the same regard? You devoted years to raising them with love and care, yet now you find yourself asking, where did I go wrong? It's painful, isn't it? But here's something crucial to remember. Reacting with frustration or sinking into despair won't fix the situation. Instead, there are wise and effective steps you can take to restore peace, dignity, and respect without causing conflict. In today's video, I'll share 8 powerful strategies that you can start applying right away. These are proven, thoughtful methods that have helped many elderly parents mend strained relationships, and they can work for you too. Let's get started. Number 1. Avoid reacting in anger. Pause and reflect. When those we've raised with love and care begin to show disrespect, the pain cuts deep. It's only natural to feel hurt and want to respond with frustration. You might even think, how can you treat me this way after everything I've done for you? But before letting your emotions take control, take a moment to pause and reflect. Reacting in anger often creates more distance and makes the situation worse. Consider the story of Mr. Tanaka, a retired schoolteacher in his 70s. His children rarely visited, and when they did, their conversations were brief and distant. One day, after yet another unanswered phone call, he felt frustration rising within him. He was tempted to call his son and demand, "Do you even care about me anymore?" But instead, he held back. He chose to take a quiet walk in the nearby park. As he walked, memories surfaced. His years of dedication as a teacher, the sacrifices he made for his family, and the joyful moments he once shared with his children. He came to understand that his worth wasn't dependent on whether his children called him or not. His value lay in the life he had built and the kindness he had shown to others. That moment of quiet reflection helped him realize that his dignity wasn't something his children could take away, no matter how distant they became. This story holds a powerful lesson. Emotional reactions rarely lead to positive outcomes. When you lash out, you don't earn respect. You risk losing it. Instead, take a moment to pause, breathe, and reflect. Remind yourself of your own value. By doing this, you'll approach the situation with a clearer mind and a stronger sense of self-worth, which often leads to better communication and, over time, a mended relationship. Remember, dignity is something you carry within. It doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. Calm reflection will always provide more clarity than anger ever could. Number 2. Rebuild your life. Find a new purpose. One of the most effective ways to cope when your children seem distant is to shift your focus back to yourself. Instead of waiting for their attention or approval, start rebuilding your own life by discovering a new purpose. When you lead a fulfilled and meaningful life, your energy shifts and people notice. A parent who exudes joy, confidence, and independence naturally draws others in. Take the story of Mrs. Elena, a widow in her late 60s. After losing her husband, her children visited less frequently, their calls grew shorter, and eventually they stopped altogether. At first, she was heartbroken, spending hours by the phone, hoping it would ring. But one morning, she made a decision. She wouldn't wait any longer. She picked up a packet of seeds from her cupboard and stepped into her garden. What started as a simple hobby, planting flowers and tending vegetables, soon became her passion. She joined a local gardening club, made new friends, and even began sharing her harvest with neighbors. Elena's outlook transformed. She became happier, more active, and deeply connected to her community. Then one day, her daughter called unexpectedly. "Mom, I've been thinking about you lately. You sound so happy these days. What's your secret?" That simple phone call led to more visits and deeper conversations. Elena's newfound purpose rekindled her children's admiration for her. They no longer saw her as someone waiting for their attention, but as a person living a rich and meaningful life. The key takeaway is clear: a fulfilled parent is much harder to overlook. When your life has purpose, people, including your children, are naturally drawn to you. Instead of waiting for them to return, start investing in yourself. Explore hobbies, join community groups, or volunteer. The joy you cultivate within yourself will not only bring you peace, but may also bring your children back into your life. Number 3. Express your feelings thoughtfully. When your children become distant or seem disrespectful, it's natural to want to confront them with frustration. You might feel like saying, "Why don't you ever call me? Don't you care about me anymore?" However, harsh words often create defensiveness and push them further away. Instead, the key is to express your emotions in a way that encourages connection rather than conflict. A gentle, heartfelt approach is far more effective than blame or guilt. Consider the story of Mr. Peterson, a retired carpenter who hadn't heard from his son, James, in months. Every day, he sat by the window, hoping to see James pull into the driveway. The silence weighed on him, and he often thought about picking up the phone to demand an explanation. But instead of letting his frustration take control, he chose a different approach. He sat at his kitchen table and began writing a letter. In the letter, he expressed his feelings without placing blame. He wrote, "James, you've been on my mind a lot lately. I miss our conversations and hearing about your life. I just want you to know that I'm always here for you, and I'm proud of you no matter what." A few days later, his phone rang. It was James. The letter had deeply moved him. He admitted that work and family had kept him busy, but he hadn't realized how much his father missed him. That one letter sparked regular phone calls and weekend visits, something that hadn't happened in years. The key takeaway here is to communicate thoughtfully. Instead of blaming your children for their absence, express your emotions in a gentle way. Use phrases like, "I miss our time together," or "I've been thinking about you," rather than accusing them with, "You never call me." Words have the power to either heal or wound, and when you choose them wisely, you create space for understanding and reconnection. Number 4. Establish healthy boundaries. Respect is a two-way street. While you want your children to respect you, it's just as important to respect yourself by setting healthy boundaries. If you allow disrespect to go unchecked, it signals that you're willing to tolerate hurtful behavior. But when you stand up for your well-being, you not only protect your peace of mind, you also teach others how to treat you. Take the story of Mrs. Rosa, a retired nurse in her 70s. Her son, Daniel, had become increasingly demanding over the years. He rarely visited unless he needed something: money, help with his kids, or simply someone to unload his frustrations on. Mrs. Rosa always dropped everything to assist him, hoping that her sacrifices would make him appreciate her more. But Daniel's expectations only grew. He would show up unannounced, assume she would babysit for hours without asking, and never once express gratitude. One day, after yet another last-minute request, Mrs. Rosa decided she had reached her limit. Instead of agreeing, she calmly but firmly said, "Daniel, I love you, but I'm not available today. I've made plans for myself." At first, Daniel was taken aback, even frustrated. But Mrs. Rosa remained consistent. She stopped giving in to unreasonable demands and focused on her own well-being. She joined a local book club, started attending yoga classes, and reconnected with old friends. Over time, Daniel noticed the shift. His mother was no longer waiting by the phone or constantly adjusting her life to accommodate him. He began to treat her with more respect, realizing that his behavior had been unfair. The key takeaway is clear. Respect should be mutual. You deserve to be treated with kindness and consideration, but it starts with how you treat yourself. Setting boundaries doesn't push your children away. It shows them that your time, energy, and emotional well-being matter. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to follow your lead. Number 5. Lead by example. It's easy to expect respect from others, but true respect is something that must be earned, often through our own actions. If you want your children to treat you with respect, start by demonstrating what that looks like. The way you speak, act, and treat others, including your children, can have a significant impact on their behavior. When you lead by example, you silently teach those around you how to respond in return. Consider the story of Mr. Lorenzo, a retired factory worker and grandfather of 5. As he got older, he noticed that his adult children visited less frequently. When they did come by, they seemed distracted, constantly checking their phones and quick to leave. It pained him deeply. But instead of reacting with frustration or resentment, Mr. Lorenzo took a different approach. He continued to treat his children with warmth and respect, even when they didn't always reciprocate. Whenever they visited, he welcomed them with a smile and said, "It's so wonderful to see you." He never criticized their long absences or complained about their lack of attention. Instead, he showed genuine interest in their lives, asked thoughtful questions, and listened attentively. When they needed advice, he offered it with kindness and wisdom. Even when his children forgot his birthday one year, he didn't let bitterness take root. Instead, he simply sent a message: "I hope you're all doing well. I miss you." Over time, things began to shift. His children started noticing his unwavering patience and kindness. They began visiting more often, calling regularly, and even bringing their children to spend time with him. Mr. Lorenzo's quiet dignity and consistent respect became a powerful example for his family. The key takeaway here is that respect is contagious. When you treat others, including your children, with respect, you plant a seed. It may take time, but eventually they will reflect that behavior back. Instead of demanding respect, embody it. Treat your children the way you want to be treated, and in time they will come to value and return that same respect and kindness. Number 6. 6. Maintain financial independence. As you age, one of the best ways to earn and keep your children's respect is by staying financially independent. It's natural to hope that your children will support you in your later years, but relying on them entirely for financial needs can create strain and even resentment. Independence, on the other hand, earns admiration. When your children see that you are capable of managing your own affairs, they are more likely to see you as strong and self-sufficient, someone to look up to, rather than someone they must take care of. Consider the story of Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a retired couple in their 70s. After retiring, they chose to downsize their home and simplify their lifestyle to ensure they could comfortably live within their retirement savings. They carefully managed their finances, budgeting wisely and avoiding unnecessary debt. Despite living on a fixed income, they remained independent, never needing to ask their children for financial help. At first, their children didn't fully recognize the wisdom behind their parents' careful planning, but over time, they began to notice something significant. Their parents never asked for money, never complained about financial struggles, and always seemed in control of their situation. Before long, their children started turning to them for advice on budgeting and planning for retirement. The respect they had for their parents grew naturally, not because it was demanded, but because of the example Mr. and Mrs. Carter set by taking responsibility for their own lives. The key takeaway is simple. Financial independence sends a strong message. It demonstrates that you value your dignity and won't become a burden on your family. This doesn't mean refusing help if you truly need it, but it does mean making an effort to manage your own affairs as much as possible. When your children see that you have taken charge of your life, they will respect you for it. As a result, they will be more willing to offer their love and support, not out of obligation, but from genuine care. Number 7. Forgive, but remember your worth. When your children hurt you by ignoring or disrespecting you, forgiveness can be one of the hardest yet most powerful things you can offer. Holding on to resentment only weighs you down, while forgiveness allows you to heal and move forward with peace. However, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting your own worth. You can let go of past hurts without allowing their actions to define your value. Take the story of Mrs. Evelyn, a retired artist and mother of 2. Over the years, her daughter Claire had grown distant, rarely calling or visiting. Evelyn felt abandoned and questioned whether she had done something wrong. For a long time, she carried that pain, believing she no longer mattered. One day, Evelyn made a choice. She decided to release the anger. She wrote Claire a letter saying, "I forgive you for the distance between us, and I will always love you." But alongside this act of forgiveness, she quietly reclaimed her dignity. Instead of waiting for a call that might never come, she picked up her paintbrushes and returned to her art, something she hadn't done in years. She joined a local art club, displayed her work at community events, and rediscovered the joy of doing what she loved. Months later, Claire showed up unexpectedly. She was surprised to see her mother, so happy and fulfilled. "Mom, you've started painting again. Why didn't you tell me?" Claire asked, visibly touched by her mother's artwork. Evelyn simply smiled and replied, "I've been focusing on what brings me happiness." That moment marked a shift in their relationship. Claire began visiting more often, not out of guilt, but out of admiration for her mother's quiet strength and independence. The key takeaway is this: forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, but it should never mean diminishing your own value. You deserve to be treated with respect, no matter what. Let go of past hurts, but never allow anyone's neglect or mistreatment to make you forget your worth. Pursue what brings you joy, live with dignity, and remember, your value comes from within, not from how others treat you. Number 8. Create a new circle of companionship. Loneliness can be one of the hardest parts of feeling ignored or disrespected by your children. When you have no one else to turn to, you might start relying on them for emotional support, hoping they'll fill the emptiness. But emotional dependence can lead to frustration and disappointment, especially if they don't meet your expectations. That's why it's important to build a new circle of companionship. By forming connections with friends, neighbors, or members of a community group, you can ease the pain of neglect and create a fulfilling social life. Take the story of Mr. Harold, a widower in his 80s. For years, he depended on his son and daughter for companionship, expecting them to fill the gap left by his late wife. But as they became busier with their own lives, their visits became shorter and less frequent. He felt increasingly isolated, spending most of his days alone in his house. But one day, after spending yet another week in solitude, Harold made a decision. He would join a local senior community center. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he felt a glimmer of hope. To his surprise, he quickly found companionship. The center had weekly coffee meetups, a monthly book club, and even a group that enjoyed morning walks in the park. Before long, Harold found himself looking forward to these gatherings. His new friendships became a source of joy. He shared laughter, stories, and even joined a small group that took short trips together. As he built this new social circle, something changed. He no longer depended on his children for emotional fulfillment. He still loved them and appreciated their visits, but he no longer felt the deep void when they were busy. The key lesson here is simple. Loneliness can create emotional dependence, but meaningful relationships can help fill the gap. By expanding your social circle, you free yourself from relying solely on your children for support. This not only improves your emotional well-being, but also allows your relationship with your children to grow in a healthier, more balanced way. In the end, navigating the ups and downs of relationships with our children as we grow older can be difficult, but it is possible to find peace, dignity, and respect by applying these 8 key principles. From taking a moment to reflect before reacting in anger, to setting firm boundaries and leading by example, you can foster healthier, more meaningful connections with your children, while still valuing your own needs and self-worth. Thank you for watching. If these insights resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below with a 9 if you're ready to put these steps into practice, or a 0 if you're still in the process of reflecting on them. Take care, and always remember, your worth is never diminished by how others treat you.